Good afternoon. My name is Mayor Stefan Roots, City of Chester, Stefanroots. Great to be here with you guys today. I really only have two asks, and one of them is to make the old incinerator plants meet the standards of the new plants, and secondly, to make sure that renewable energy credits are discontinued with incineration. When I talk about my city of Chester, it's a city of 34,000 people, and we're all packed into a small 4.4 mile radius. But 2 million people burn their trash here in Chester, and it comes in equal parts from Delaware County, Philadelphia, and New York City. I'm going to touch on three things today. One of them is just the emission standards and the revisions that are being discussed today. The new standards versus the grandfathered standards, and finally three factors to pollution limits, being the concentration of pollution released, constant monitoring, which was just mentioned, and the accumulated effects. To my understanding, emission standards for incineration are to be revised every 5 years, and we haven't seen a revision in 13 years. I know you're not personally responsible, and I thank you for being with us today. When I look at new incineration standards, the proposed higher standards for incinerator emissions are a step in the right direction, and I thank you for that, but I'm troubled by the difference between proposed regulations for the current Chester incinerator and what you require from new incinerators, which would be built in another city. We've endured these grandfathered emission standards. They've been in place for generations, since the 80s. The EPA should not be granting the Chester incinerator a lifetime grandfather pass to treat our city as a second-class environmental city or concerns are under those regulations. The grandfather status has been in effect for like 30 years, and it just shouldn't go on forever. As mayor, the new regulations should set a date for when Chester incinerator meets the same environmental health and safety standards as a new incinerator in another city. We deserve the same respect another city will receive if they host a new incinerator. When I consider the three factors to pollution limits, the first one is the concentration of pollution release. Pollution limits for incinerators, that's what they're based on, and they do not consider that Chester's incinerator is the largest in the country. You must look beyond just concentration releases. You need to consider the total amount of pollutants released. It's not just, if I were to give an analogy, it's like I can have a beer that is 4% alcohol, and that might be cool, but if I'm drinking that beer every hour for the next 30 years, it's probably not a safe thing for me. There's the frequency of checks. Current regulations call for checking most pollution levels once a year. That's ridiculous. New EPA regulations should require constant monitoring for mercury, lead, particulate matter, and all the other regulated pollutants. As long as us humans breathe continuously, they should be monitoring those pollutants continuously. Chester's been an environmental dumping ground for generations. The proposed regulations don't consider the cumulative effects, and we have a lot of industry up and down the waterfront, so I would love for the EPA rule to also consider that. And as I started out earlier, the other piece that I do want to bring up is, one is a quote from the EPA itself, or the DEP in Pennsylvania, that Chester's been forced to bear a disproportionate share of adverse environmental impacts, and it hasn't had meaningful involvement in development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. And finally, in closing, I just want to say that the renewable energy credit idea is just ridiculous to me. I don't know how you can compare trash to solar and wind and give tax credits and incentives for incinerators to operate like that. Thank you.